Today is Sunday, May 21st, 2017. This is Celtics Beat on the CLNS Media Network, and I am Matt Ignall. And we want to welcome everyone inside to another edition of Celtics Beat. What a week it has been for the Boston Celtics, winning Game 7 in thrilling fashion, the Kelly Olynyk game. Then, the very next night, receiving the number 1 overall pick in the 2017 NBA Draft, before ending the week by being absolutely humbled by the Cavs. On top of that, to add injury to insult, Isaiah Thomas aggravated a right hip strain he suffered in Game 6 in the Wizards series. It looks pretty serious. Matt Ignall here, filling in for Larry H. Russell on this morning of Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics. You might recognize me from the Celtics Roundtable on the Boston Celtics newsfeed, another essential CLNS podcast, which features pregame reports, daily debate and discussion, postgame audio clips, and of course, Celtics news. In just a moment, I am going to be joined by Sam Vecenie, who writes for Vice Sports Sporting News and has his own podcast on the CLNS Media Network, Game Theory, where Sam discusses basketball at the high school, college, and NBA level. Right now, however, their focus is on the NBA Draft. Believe me when I say it's a must-listen for true basketball junkies. We are going to be discussing the Eastern Conference Finals and that number 1 pick. But first, a message from the host of Celtics Beat to you, the fans of the show. Here's Larry H. Russell.
Thanks, Matt. I want to take this time to offer a few words to those who continue to take the time themselves to download and listen to this show week in and week out, and especially now as more and more inquiries and messages have come in through all means of communication with us here at that network, with myself, Nick Gelso, I can speak for him, and anyone else associated with this broadcast and the network itself. First off, I am beyond flattered, especially messages that have been personally addressed to me. I know it sounds quite stale, but it's just about impossible to put into words to describe how much the compliments of me alone, of the show, of CLNS, especially these past 4 weeks now, what that means to me. Believe me when I say it, despite this being what I do for a living, the appreciation from those who listen, especially to whomever I know personally as well, that is still the driving force as to why I do this week in and week out. Yes, even so far more than my own love of the Celtics, and of course that does pay the bills. That is an admittance to vanity, but I may as well be straight with everyone. I seriously cannot thank everyone enough who downloads Celtics Beat, let alone those who actually personally make me aware of that. So I just wanted to take this time to give a quick update on my whereabouts, especially since a return here on my end is very, very near. And I can even actually offer a take or two on this very Celtics team that has been the focal point of this broadcast for the better part of 5 years now, as after all, they are here in the freaking Eastern Conference Finals, and oh yeah, they just won the right to the number 1 overall selection in the coming NBA Draft earlier this week. So suffice it to say, I have missed a lot since the last time I was on the air at the end of April, but the Celtics haven't missed me, which I guess is fine for everyone. After all, man is defined by their contributions to the common cause, to whatever degree, although I would say for me it's small. But anyways, as many of you know me as the host of this broadcast, more so, I am the executive producer here at what is now the CLNS Media Network, and with it comes some other responsibilities to the network, to podcasters throughout our channel and the mobile app. And to those who utilize our app, you may have noticed that there are additions to that channel by the day. Jim Grant, the famed independent investment analyst, he who was once former presidential candidate Ron Paul's choice for chairman of the Federal Reserve. He's been publishing Grant's Interest Rate Observer for the better part of 35 years now. He's a frequent guest on all the business shows, Charlie Rose, 60 Minutes. He's done some cover stories for Time Magazine. His broadcast, Grant's podcast, that is available on the CLNS app now. That is something I cannot tell you how proud we are of that, especially myself. I can't wait for that going forward. It's been a great success thus far, and I've had a lot of fun even just working with it, although I can't wait to get back here. But also just running down the roster, one of the largest history and education podcasts in the interwebs, a personal favorite of mine actually, History of Ancient Greece. And also, yes, for our basketball-centric audience, especially Celtics, Lakers Nation, Cavs Nation, which is hosted by our good friend Coach Nick. Their shows and everything else that's been coming on board, we've spent a lot of time getting that up and running, a lot of production, promotion, monetizing the content. I've spent a lot of time on just a lot of travel, so I still am, as I'm sure anyone who's listening to the cell phone recording can conclude by now. But also the biggie, the new CLNS website, which is set to launch in June. It's been a massive undertaking, but we're just about ready to rock with that, which means I'll be ready to rock here. So actually, to celebrate CLNS Radio's relaunch as CLNS Media, we're going to be giving away an authentic Bill Russell autographed Spalding. Enter at clnscontest.com. That's clnscontest.com. The contest ends on June 7th. You can share with your friends and get the bonus entries. All of this could not have been done without you who have deemed our content worth your consumption over the years now. That is why we do all these contests for autographs, playoff tickets, Celtics meet and greets, any ways we can reciprocate on our end. And all of this cannot have been done without the Celtics themselves. Remember once way back yonder when Boston mainstream media still kind of do actually, they're having their hand forced a little bit by you, the consumer, thank you very much. But once upon a time, they deemed the Celtics not interesting enough for your time, even despite your demands. Oh, they don't have a big enough fan base. They won't bring in the ratings, which, won't bring in the money. Well, we can see now, especially with our success here at CLNS, that's complete BS. Because look at this. And now on their end, their only means of being able to address the demands that there is for Celtics content is to engage in basketball discourse simply by trolling Celtics fans. The same very Celtics fans or basketball fans in general that have been the driving force behind the success here at CLNS, where we're hiring talent from all realms. We're bringing in new sponsors. We're opening many more streams of revenue. We're hiring, not firing. The media, in our eyes, has never been more healthy. It is not a dangerous time for the industry. It is for the losers. It is not for the winners. And we know who the winners and the losers are now. That is as clear as day. And we are going to continue to treat our audience and those who engage with us with the amount of respect and decency they deserve. And mark my words, work harder than ever at putting forth the most unique forms of presentation throughout all aspects of life, including the crowning jewel franchise of professional basketball, the Boston Celtics. One of the final four teams in the NBA for the 2017 campaign. That was quick, huh? 2014 didn't seem too long ago. And yes, they the victors in this past Tuesday's draft lottery, which, by the way, I can confess, I can't believe that. I still had to stare at the morning paper the next day or read like a gazillion articles on my phone with the various headlines of the Celtics winning that lottery to just sort of let it sink in finally, because I've let the past skewer my irrational perception of how they were and would fare in that. I expected the worst, but you know what? It's done, and that is now going to be in June, and the draft will be then. The Celtics, fortune let it have it. They're playing in Cleveland tonight, and no, the series is not easy. Winning even one game in Cleveland is going to qualify as a semi-miracle, but regardless, stay in the moment. Appreciate what is happening now in this very eternal now. That is how we develop memories as fans, or memories in life for that matter. Don't think, as many did before the series, and especially now, it could play out, Cleveland's going to kill them. Or on the other side of the spectrum, got to get Gordon Hayward this offseason, or whoever they would select. Enjoy the now. Enjoy the present. That's how Monday's Game 7, that just electric game, which I've watched probably 3 times over, and is something now that any diehard fan will appreciate and reminisce about the same way, say, someone like me, and I'll even still think about that Game 7. I still reminisce about my sophomore year in high school when that Celtics team, they had that run of the Eastern Conference Finals. They lost to New Jersey, but they had the biggest comeback in playoff history. It was just a great season and was still one of the most enjoyable times, not just for me as a sports fan, my entire life. So whatever doomsday scenario may play out against the Cavs or whatever fantasy there is about the draft or free agency, that is still then. This is now. The now should still be appreciated and accepted as such. This always takes me to a passage that I have since read somewhere around 1 million times in my life, and I can recite it off the top of my head wherever I go. And it's from Plutarch, who was the famed Greek and Roman historian writing in the 1st century AD in his profile of Marius, who was a Roman general who was a part of the Republic's initial civil war, which was the precursor to the empire eventually being ushered in by the Caesars. And it was a critique of Marius. And in it, Plutarch wrote, and these words cannot apply more so than here, and I just about quote on this: "Thoughtless and forgetful people let everything that happens to them slip away as time passes. And so, laying hold of and retaining nothing, real good always eludes them. Instead, they fill themselves with hopes and neglect the present while they fix their eyes on the future. Yet what happens in the future is subject to fortune, whereas the present is here and cannot be taken away." So get ready for tonight. Appreciate tonight. Game 3 of the conference finals, where the Celtics are still playing and just about everybody else is not. And Matt and Mr. Vecenie, go out and kill it here on episode number 210. And I will talk to everyone very, very soon.
All right, we want to welcome on the all-around basketball expert, Sam Vecenie. Sam, after this horrible Game 2 loss, I'm seeing very strong reactions on Twitter from Celtics fans. How about you, like, just as a fan of the game, are you as distressed about these Eastern Conference Finals as the rest of us?
Just burn down the city. I mean, I think that's the easiest way to go about it, right? If you burn down Boston, you probably burn down the Garden, and I think it's all fine after that, right? I think we're good.
Guess I'm not too optimistic about seeing Game 5 in Boston. I think at the end of that game, when you saw the fans clapping for the Celtics, chanting "Let's go Celtics," I think that might have been an understanding that Game 5 is probably a remote possibility. But hey, anything could happen in one game, as strange as that sounds, after that complete, I guess, humiliation by the Cavs on Friday night. So I've been stressing, I guess, that Isaiah Thomas hasn't really looked right since sometime in the Wizards series, and I was sure of it kind of following Game 1. Like, Isaiah Thomas used to blow by guys all year. He was completely unguardable in single coverage, and in Game 1, we saw frequently, like, a big got switched onto him, which usually means death for the defense. But Isaiah couldn't get around these guys. He couldn't get that space at the rim that we normally see from him. I just saw like zero burst from him. And now we learned over the weekend that he suffered a hip strain in Game 6 of the Wizards series. Then in Game 2 of the Cavaliers series, he aggravates it in a collision. When you look at this, Sam, obviously the Cavs are playing great. Boston isn't they're clearly not doing enough to slow them down and at least make this somewhat respectable. Do you see this as more like scheme or personnel or some mixture of the two, or have like the Celtics just lost all belief that they can beat this team?
I think a lot of it is just talent, right? Like, the Cavs are just way better than the Celtics, and I know that, like, a lot of people will point to the fact that the Celtics were the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference and, you know, had a 2-game advantage on the Cavs and all of this stuff. But, like, I think it was on this podcast, on the Celtics Beat podcast, where I said after the trade deadline that they were more than a Jimmy Butler or Paul George away from beating Cleveland in the playoffs. And I think that ultimately what we're seeing is not only were they more than a Jimmy Butler and a Paul George away from beating the Cavs in the playoffs, but like they're probably a little bit more than that away. Plus, we're seeing the downside of a not 100% Isaiah Thomas. Like, I understand that he was like questionable going into Game 7, but it's kind of a ridiculous designation, right? Because I think that if Isaiah Thomas was in a wheelchair, he would have been playing in Game 7 against the Wizards. Like, it's kind of like what we saw with Stephen Curry last year in the playoffs, right? Like, he was clearly not 100%, not right. And in the end, the Cavs are just such a talented team that are, you know, so well schemed and so locked in the playoffs because of LeBron that they just know exactly how to take advantage of those little slight deficiencies that they see. And Cleveland deserves a lot of credit, too, for the way that they've built this roster, I think. They've built it in a way that it's kind of perfect for the playoffs. They don't really have a ton of deficiencies, and realistically, they don't have any deficiencies on offense because they can destroy the offensive glass with Tristan Thompson, as we've seen with Game 1, really, was the key where Thompson was awesome on the offensive glass. Game 2, you know, he played 25 minutes, didn't really have a crazy offensive glass game, but then again, it's not like the Cavaliers missed a lot of shots either. If they need to shoot the ball from deep, they have Kyle Korver, J.R. Smith, Kevin Love, Channing Frye, Darren Williams. Like, all of these role players that David Griffin has built around the Cavs to just create the utmost spacing possible around his three superstars in LeBron James, Kevin Love, and Kyrie Irving. I think it's more than anything a testament to the way that you build an organization around a hyper elite superstar who can get into the lane and do whatever he wants on offense. You build it with spacing around them on offense, make it so that it's impossible for the defense to stop them, and then just hope that your superstar and your center and Tristan Thompson, and hopefully whoever you have, it's kind of transferable to other organizations as well. I think San Antonio is kind of an example of this too. Just hope that the rest of the players on your team can just outscore the opposition as opposed to, fall into these traps in terms of the way that you see the Celtics end up isolated with Kelly Olynyk on LeBron. You need to have guys who are not necessarily awesome two ways, but are at least solid enough within their execution that this kind of stuff doesn't keep happening.
Yeah, same thing with like a guy like Ryan Anderson, right?
Yeah, that's a great example. I think that Greg Popovich did a great job of consistently finding a way to get Ryan Anderson isolated on anyone, basically, really. They just attacked constantly. Whoever Ryan Anderson was on, it was done. So, I think the key is that you really just need to find guys that maybe they're not like quote-unquote two-way players, but they're players who are at least solid enough in the scheme to where they're not going to make terrible mistakes.
So even so, I still feel like Celtics fans had higher hopes for the Celtics defense, at least not allowing so many points and so many open shots. They're as great as the Cavs are playing, and I think they played like an A+ game in game 2. I mean, they were just so locked in, and they're hitting every single open shot. But Brad Stevens suggested in the game 2 postgame that he thought that the Celtics missed a couple of shots in a row, and they are getting a fair amount of open shots. I thought the Cavs defense was pretty good in game 2, but the Celtics offense is still good enough, even with a hobbled Isaiah Thomas, but before he went down, to generate open shots, and they're just missing. But he suggested that they're missing these shots, and then that sort of is dictating how they defend on the other end. And this team has shown a lot of mental toughness at times, although a lot of people think it was a little bit more consistent a year ago. But they've also had moments where I guess you just expected a little bit more with the type of guys they have on their team. And I know the Cavs do this to teams, but it looks like the Celtics are sort of struggling with, I guess, believing in themselves against the Cavs.
Yeah, I think that you brought up a great point, right? Like, in game 1, I think they made more open shots. Game 2 was just a disaster, right? Like, every single thing went wrong,
they were
basically,
down by 50.
Every single thing went wrong from the opening tip. Like, you can't expect that to happen, right? Like, you cannot expect, to miss open shot after open shot. Like Avery Bradley, there's one that like stands out in my mind where like Avery Bradley was wide open and just like totally missed. And those are the shots that Avery Bradley knocks down all the time. And, he goes 1 for 5 from 3. Jay Crowder goes 1 for 4 from 3. Isaiah misses both of his 3-point attempts. Urebko misses his 3-point attempt. Olynyk misses his 3-point attempt. Like, it was just an unlucky scenario, I guess, right? Like, sometimes the shots are going to go, sometimes they don't. Game 2, they didn't go. Game 1, they went at a reasonable pace, but, Cleveland was making shots at an unreasonable pace. It's just a tricky spot for the Celtics, right? Like, they can't get down on themselves, but against this Cavs team, it's so easy to get down on themselves after you see shot after shot after shot after shot fall. So it's a tough spot, and I feel for Celtics fans, certainly, but there are certainly some brighter horizons ahead for this organization.
Oh, sure, we'll get there. Let's stick with this Eastern Conference Finals, as painful as it might be. So on the broadcast, Chris Webber was killing the Celtics for either slotting a big onto LeBron or switching and letting LeBron go one-on-one against a big. And I guess part of the problem is that the Celtics don't really have a great defender against LeBron. I mean, no one's really a great defender against him, but at least, the Kawhi Leonards of the world, the Jimmy Butlers, Paul Georges, even like PJ Tucker or something like that. You have guys that can at least slow him down just a little bit. I don't really think Jay Crowder has shown over the past couple of years with LeBron's gaudy point totals against the Celtics that he's truly up to the task. And I know Celtics fans are just dying to see more of Jaylen Brown out there against LeBron James. He actually might be the best LeBron defender on the team. I don't know how he would fare over a full 48 minutes against him, but with the Celtics matchups, I mean, it's just bad. Like Gerald, I don't know if I really agreed with Brad Stevens putting Gerald Green out there to start the game. That might have been in response to knowing that Isaiah Thomas is injured and that they just needed to open the floor a little bit more. They were able to hide him against the Bulls because of their predictable offense, and Dwayne Wade didn't really bother to guard Gerald Green. It was demonstrated that you couldn't hide Gerald Green against the Wizards, and you certainly can't against the Cavs. But I guess my question is there anything the Celtics can do to slow down the Cavs in this context?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should probably start Jaylen Brown in this for Gerald Green at the combo forward spot or whatever you want to call it now. He would at least have a chance to defend LeBron. You might be able to hide Jay Crowder on Kevin Love. He's a little bit short, and Love might be able to kind of take him into the post a little bit easier. But I'm willing to take that shot over, what we've seen from LeBron against Jay over the last few years. In terms of being able to win, this series, I don't really think there's any major adjustment they can make that's going to let that happen. But if you put in Jaylen Brown, who I think has probably been their best player of the series, do we think that's fair?
Yeah, he scored 19 points. He was only a minus 14 in a game they lost by 44?
Yeah, he was definitely their best player last night, but even game one, he was pretty good. I'd probably give him a chance at least. Putting a rookie on LeBron in the playoffs does not seem optimal in terms of strategy, but it's the predicament the Celtics are in, right? They're grasping at straws essentially to try and slow down the this freight train that is Cleveland at the moment around this basically unstoppable lineup of KYRIE, LeBron, Kevin Love, and whoever they want to put around those guys. So whenever you have that kind of offensive weaponry, and all three of those guys are just so locked in, like all three of them are right now, it's really hard to find a solution. And to be honest, I don't know that there's a great one. And I mean, the other problem with all of this is, even when the Cavs miss shots, the Celtics just aren't a clean enough offensive rebounding team or defensive rebounding team to really, take care of business. Al Horford has gotten his lunch eaten by Tristan Thompson, each of the last, I guess now 3 playoffs really. And that's a significant problem for Boston. And I think it's a problem going forward, as they continue, over the next 3 years really to try and build around Al Horford and try and make a run to the NBA finals and hopefully a title.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Celtics fans are even the most, I guess maybe the most optimistic Celtics fans are hoping to steal a game. Maybe the rest of us are hoping to at least make it respectable. It's playoff season, and having the right players on the court will be the key to success. That sharp outside shooter or power rebounder can be the difference between winning and losing. Business isn't any different. Your company needs the right people to be the best. So where do you go to find top talent? You can't find the best candidates by posting your job on just one site. You need to post on all the top job sites, and now you can with ZipRecruiter. At ZipRecruiter.com, you can post your job to 100 plus job sites with one click. Then their powerful technology efficiently matches the right people to your position. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you, it finds them. In fact, over 80% of jobs posted on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate in just 24 hours. No more juggling emails or calls to your office. Simply screen, rate, and manage candidates all in one place with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use dashboard. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes nationwide. And right now, Celtics Beat listeners can start forming their own winning team on ZipRecruiter for free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/sportsfan. That's ZipRecruiter.com/sportsfan. Try it for free today at ZipRecruiter.com/sportsfan. Let's switch gears to happier thoughts here, outside of the Eastern Conference Finals. You are a college basketball expert after all, and fortune has smiled upon the Celtics, as it basically has since the mega deal with Brooklyn. Brad Stevens is looking like an A-plus hire. They turned a declining Rajon Rondo into Jay Crowder, Guerschon Yabusele, and more. They got IT for pennies on the dollar, and then he became a second-team All-NBA. Congratulations, Isaiah, by the way. The Knicks and the Hornets did not accept that horrible proposed trade of 4 first-round picks, including at least 1 Brooklyn pick, so that the Celtics could move up to grab Justice Winslow. The one thing they were lacking over this time was lottery luck until Tuesday night, where they received the number 1 overall pick. And time again, we see that in order to win at the highest level, you need Hall of Fame players, actually probably 2 or more. Maybe the Celtics can get 1 here. So, let's start at the top. For the 2017 number 1 pick, if you're the Celtics, do you trade it for a guy like Paul George or Jimmy Butler?
No, and the reason I don't is because I still believe that the Celtics have more firepower than any other organization to go get a superstar without including that number 1 overall 2017 pick. They still have guys, and this is kind of going back to what I was talking about before, they still have enough assets in guys like Jay Crowder on his contract and Avery Bradley on a 1-year deal and, Marcus Smart, Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown, like throwing in that 2018 pick, throwing in all of the future Boston picks that they own. They still have enough to go out and get a superstar, even by not including a guy like Markelle Fultz in that mix. So if I'm the Celtics, I am not considering moving this trade pick at all.
Right. I think most Celtics fans are in agreement with that, or at least the ones that I surround myself with. Yeah, I think the number 1 pick is just worth too much at this point. Okay, so everybody seems convinced that they'll take Markelle Fultz. For the listeners who haven't dived into, his YouTube highlights or the ones that didn't catch a ton of Washington games over the course of this last year. And I mean, they were pretty brutal outside of Markelle. Yeah,
I wish I hadn't caught as many as I did.
Oh yeah, I hate watched them. But there was always Markelle though. Until he hurt his knee. But can you give these fans a brief rundown on what he brings to the table and just comment on how good he is?
Yeah, he's awesome. The way to put it is, my old colleague at CBS, Matt Norlander, posted a question on Twitter, a few days ago, maybe yesterday, maybe the day before. How would you rank these guards coming out of college? John Wall, Markelle Fultz, Damian Lillard, and Kyrie Irving. I would have ranked them, John Wall, probably, number 1 out of that group. But then I would have Markelle Fultz ahead of Kyrie and Damian Lillard. And that's ultimately what I believe. I believe that Markelle Fultz will be a top 10 offensive player in the NBA. He is there's nothing he can't do offensively, is the best way to put it. He can score from all 3 levels. Really, really good passer, underrated ability to pass the ball, really, because of what his teammates were. His teammates shot something like 31% from 3 this year, and he still averaged 6 assists a game, even with the floor spacing being a total nightmare. Incredibly acrobatic finisher at the rim, can really do a lot of, can finish above the rim if necessary. Can leap off of both 1 foot or 2 feet whenever he gets inside. Has a good in-between mid-range game that is incredibly important, I think, for lead guards, because you want those guys with the ball at the end of the shot clock to be able to create, efficient looks. And sometimes the best way to do that is by being able to score at all 3 levels. Good shooter, coming off of screens. He can knock down shots off the dribble, off the catch. Unbelievable instincts in the pick and roll for being able to, get guys on his hip and keep them there, get guys on his back and keep them there. Can explode past switches, has the shake, has the wiggle to, kind of shimmy past really good defenders, has the change of pace to be able to, really play with great tempo, and great intelligence from the point guard position. So offensively, he is one of, if not the most complete prospects I have scouted, in the, 5 or 6 years that I've been doing this. So, that's the kind of player you're talking about defensively. There are some concerns because of effort. He was certainly a part of why Washington was the worst, high major defensive team that I think I've ever seen in my life this year. He just didn't care, but he does have really, really good, is a great frame, has the potential to at least be an average defender, and can certainly be a switchable defender because he's 6'4" with a 6'10" wingspan, and has really, really good lateral and vertical explosiveness. So there's at least room for growth defensively. There is a lot to be excited with offensively with Markelle Fultz. So he is, for me, in a tier by himself at the top of the draft. I know that some people, are trying to make this a debate between Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball. I don't really see that at all. I think that Markelle is a pretty clear level above what Lonzo Ball is.
And we've seen with Jaylen Brown this year that the first thing the Boston Celtics have asked for him is defend your position. And he's actually come a really long way. I don't know how many Celtics games you caught at the beginning of the year, but it was a very frequent occurrence that you saw Jaylen Brown lose his guy off the ball, and he really cleaned that up as the year went along, with the Celtics really hammering it into him. I imagine they're going to try and do the same thing with Markelle Fultz, and he at least has defensive potential. So I don't know. I guess I'm more hopeful with him defending on the Celtics with the guys that they're going to surround him with and with the coaching staff than I would if another team we're going to be drafting him. But 23.2 points, 6 assists, 1.6 steals, 1.2 blocks, 6 rebounds as well. We know he's got like this outsized wingspan. He's got great positional size. There's really a lot to love. You mentioned some of his weaknesses on defense. What do you see? I mean, I just feel like Celtics fans are maybe just getting a little bit too carried away with Markelle Fultz. I think we know that he's going to be a really good, potentially a great player eventually. But I guess on the offensive end, if you were to pick out a few weaknesses, where might you go with that?
Occasionally shot selection, but it's kind of tough to tell. I mean, even really difficult shots for him at Washington were still probably their best chance to score. So you could say shot selection would maybe be a part. He needs to get a little bit better from the foul line. Not an awesome foul shooter. Seems to be more of a rhythm shooter than a standstill shooter, which can translate into being slightly worse at the foul line than you are from the field. Yeah, really. I mean, there's not a ton to be concerned about with him. Like, maybe you wish that he was like a nuclear, like John Wall or Russell Westbrook level athlete, but he's probably just the level below them, in terms of athleticism. So I don't know that you're super worried there either. There's really not you're really nitpicking to find holes in his offensive game, right? Like he just has so many different tools with which he can beat you that he's not only just in terms of craft, he has really perfected and worked to perfect his craft, offensively in a way that is impressive. But he's also, athletic and just has the ability to blow by guys when he wants to. So it's like a great mix of someone who has really worked to improve the little parts of his game and polish his game, but also has become or has been born with these incredible natural talents as well. So, if I was a Celtics fan, I honestly wouldn't be. I would be stoking the fire,
Okay.
And I come from it from an objective side. So I think that there's a lot to be excited about.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it was such an unfortunate situation for him at Washington. I remember every single time he ran a pick and roll, there would just be just like a hard hedge or something like that, and maybe
hard hedge with help.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. He never got open shots. There were always just two defenders on him. Like you say, he's not an A athlete, maybe like a B or B plus athlete. I sometimes wish he could have just turned the corner coming off those pick and rolls just a little bit better and gotten into the paint. But again, with all that defensive help there, that might be asking just a little bit too much. Okay, so you think that he's the crown jewel of this draft, that he's in a tier by himself. I know not all scouts would necessarily agree with you. You mentioned that. But for some reason, the Lakers are painted as this Lonzo Ball-oriented organization, and that the Celtics really love Markelle Fultz. I've been scouring the internet for actual evidence, but so far it's pretty light, and the Celtics are a pretty tight-lipped organization when it comes to this stuff, and they'd like to keep other teams guessing. But so far I've got Brian Scalabrine saying that he knows for a fact that the Celtics love Fultz, Isaiah Thomas repping his UW buddy, And Markelle Fultz recently just retweeting a bunch of Celtics stuff. Like he certainly expects to be selected first overall, but I guess I just don't have any hard evidence from the front office, and we're still a month away from the draft. So at least I'm going to try to stir up a little bit of drama here, even though Fultz is rightly thought of as the overwhelming favorite to be drafted number 1. But if I had to peg it, I'd say that if they wind up making the pick, and I'd be really upset if they didn't, but assuming they make the pick, is this like, do you see this as like a 90% probability, a 95% probability, or even higher?
I would probably say, 90 to 95. I feel pretty good about it, that they'll make the pick. I would expect that they might have Jason Tatum at number 2 on their board, maybe Lonzo Ball, but I probably would think Tatum is number 2 for them. Maybe he ends up going, maybe in for a workout and just dominating and, doing every single thing and making them think about something. But I will be totally shocked if it's not Markelle Fultz. Like it would be like, you remember when in the 2013 draft, we really had no idea who was going to go number 1 overall, and the Cavs still selected Anthony Bennett, and it still made Bill Simmons just like lose his crap on the broadcast. Like he was totally shocked and like yelping. That would be me if they took anybody but Markelle Fultz. I would be like yelping.
All right, well, let me give you a chance to like push back on that just a little bit. I guess I've heard Chad Ford, whatever you think of him, but
don't
even go there.
Matt, don't.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead. I'm joking.
Okay.
But
give me a chance here. I know he said that that he pulled front offices and they're split between Lonzo Ball and Markelle Fultz, and then I think like off the top of my head, Jay-Z Mazlitz, Dean DeMarcus, Luke Wynn. There's more people who watch this stuff and think Lonzo Ball might be in that a tier 1 prospect with Fultz. And I guess I don't know if I haven't really seen anyone truly repping like that. Jason Tatum or Josh Jackson is truly in that same tier. Only really Lonzo there. And I know he's 4th on your latest big board over at Sporting News. I guess what's so fascinating about Lonzo from a scouting perspective to me is that he sort of divides scouts who think that he's a tier 1 prospect, a guy with an excellent chance to carve out a Hall of Fame career, and those who think that he's very good, potentially great, but not markedly better than, the Jason Tatums, Josh Jacksons, Jonathan Isaacs, De'Aaron Foxes of the world. And this is, of course, because he's probably like the most unique college prospect in some time, maybe ever. I don't know. So just follow my logic here for just a second. If there are these 2 camps with generally reasonable people on both sides, and granted, one camp is probably significantly larger than the other, and without much evidence that the Celtics are in camp 1 or camp 2, how can we be sure that they don't love Lonzo Ball's game?
I talked to people from organizations, and, everyone has said that Markelle is going to be the pick to me, so I just say that Markelle is going to be the pick. I understand. I think that from a ceiling perspective, Lonzo Ball's ceiling is probably pretty darn close to what Markelle's ceiling is if everything goes right. If you just genuinely, truly believe in Lonzo Ball being this unbelievable preternatural basketball player and talent, then I understand why you think that he is a tier 1 talent. But I also am someone who values downside in prospects, and Lonzo Ball's downside is that he's a considerably worse athlete than Markelle Fultz. He is, gonna have problems as a lead ball handler, shooting, going to his right. He's also just not a great defender because he hasn't been asked to defend in his life, really. He's shown the ability at times to defend, but he still doesn't do it. He's just not as complete a prospect as Markelle Fultz. He's not as good in the pick and roll. He is not as good at shooting off the dribble. Even though I know the numbers say that, he's really one-dimensional shooting off the dribble on that, right to left crossover, step back to the left and shoot. So I see less utility with Lonzo Ball's game than I do with Markelle Fultz. Now, if Lonzo goes to the right situation and they really foster all of his talents, then sure, I can see a world where Lonzo Ball ends up being better than Markelle Fultz. But for me, I just strongly believe that, Markelle Fultz is a more complete, better prospect at not everything, but like he's not the passer that Lonzo Ball is. He might not have the instincts in terms of running a team, and he might not create a culture of unselfishness that Lonzo does. But with the way that the modern NBA is going with lead guards, I really think you need to be an elite scorer to be a lead guard in the NBA. And we haven't seen that from Lonzo yet. And I'm not sure that we will. I think it's pretty obvious that the Celtics are going to take Markelle Fultz right now.
Well, let me confess, and hopefully Celtics fans won't come for my head. But I love Lonzo Ball's games, and I think I put myself probably in that first camp, and I'll happily die on that hill saying I was wrong. If Lonzo is not special. So let's switch to some cap implications here. The number one pick, if there's a downside, it's that you got to pay him a little bit more than number 2, number 3, number 4, or something like that. I think it's going to start at $7 million for the number one pick, and then it's going to rise up to 10 over the course of the contract. And most people who follow the Celtics expect that they're going to try and open up max cap space this summer in order to chase a free agent. And like most people have their sights set on Gordon Hayward, and that might involve making some difficult choices. So with this in mind, Celtics Beat listener Daniel Lyle wrote to the show saying, "Hey, love your show. I'm a lifelong Celts fan, and I just wanted to know if you could discuss the unrealistic possibility of keeping the pick and signing a big-name free agent with cap cleared up by trading possibly Zeller and Rozier." So, Sam, let's briefly open this question up for a bit. I suspect that they won't guarantee Zeller's second year of his contract, and they'll probably have to renounce Kelly Olynyk to get close to that max space for a 7 to 9 year max player like Gordon Hayward. And then also having Markelle Fultz paying Avery Bradley, Marcus Smart, and Isaiah Thomas big raises next summer probably doesn't make too much sense for the Celtics and would push them pretty heavily into the luxury tax. Do you have a sense of what the Celtics might do in this situation, or is it just completely up in the air?
So I think that the way that they probably have to go about this is so Tyler Zeller's guarantee date is July 2nd. So I'd imagine they'll probably try and close down Gordon Hayward if they can as quickly as possible to kind of figure out if they need to find a home for Tyler Zeller or how they have to act about that. So they'll figure out what they want to do with Tyler Zeller. If it ends up that things are still pretty up in the air, I would imagine that they will, renounce Tyler Zeller's team option or decline his team option for the 2017-18 season. They'll keep Kelly Olynyk. They'll give him the qualifying offer, I would imagine, that will keep his cap hold at right around $7.5 million or so, $8 million. And if Hayward tells the team that he wants to sign, they will then renounce Kelly Olynyk and put him out into free agency and go ahead and sign Gordon Hayward. And I think that getting rid of both Zeller and Olynyk gets them pretty close to where they need to be for max cap space. They might have to find a way to move on from, or they might have to just decline Jordan Mickey's team option, which guarantees later in July. And Demetrius Jackson also has a team option that is slightly guaranteed, but again has a later in July guarantee date after the Gordon Hayward signing would theoretically occur.
Or, they could also explore, trading one of their guards and seeing potentially what they could get in the draft or something, because like I said, you can't pay all of them.
Right. Or if Gordon Hayward commits to them, they could theoretically look at okay, we can try and send out more salary than would be coming back for a Jimmy Butler trade or something like that, right? Jimmy Butler, I think, is right around 16 or so million. Maybe you can add up Jay Crowder, Jaylen Brown, and, a couple other guys and kind of make the, I'd imagine maybe they only trade one of Jay Crowder and Jaylen, but Jay Crowder and Avery Bradley or something like that, and kind of add up the salaries and make the math work on it.
Well, it's such an interesting time for the Celtics.
Yeah. This is why the Celtics have Mike Zarin and have guys like him in the front office. They can find unique, creative ways to really make the salary numbers work.
Yeah, they might be the most interesting team in the NBA, at least from a team building perspective, in the here and now. I for one can't wait to see what they do. All right, of course, Larry H. Russell and Celtics Beat will have you covered throughout the summer on the draft, on free agency, etc. All right, we want to thank Sam Vecenie for coming on the show. I implore you guys, subscribe to the Game Theory podcast. I jumped at the opportunity to be a staff writer for CLNS for that show because I love it. So definitely go check that out. Is there anything else you want to plug, Sam?
I don't think so, man. I think that, just got some stuff coming up at Sporting News. I write something at Vice every week. Just keep it locked to my Twitter feed at Sam_Vecenie, and I think that you'll find the best things about what's going on.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I love talking basketball with you, and I look forward to the next time that this happens.
Yep, really appreciate it, Matt.
Remember to subscribe to Celtics Beat on your favorite podcast app, or better yet, download the CLNS mobile app for free on iOS or Android. You can catch me over at the Boston Celtics newsfeed having roundtable discussions, and I just want to thank Larry H. Russell and the founder of the CLNS Media Network, Nick Gelso, for allowing me on this program to discuss the Boston Celtics after this crazy, crazy week for the organization. And we've now learned that Isaiah Thomas will miss the remainder of the playoffs due to that hip injury, ending what Danny Ainge called a legendary season. So hats off to Isaiah Thomas. Game 3 is tonight at 8:30 on TNT, and we'll see you next week here at Celtics Beat.